If you cannot decide on a goal and apply your sensibility and your willpower to it and make gains towards it, if that's not happening for you, there is something that was learned, that was decided, that was concluded way back when that's giving you different instructions that are different from the instructions that you decided to give yourself today. And that's what I'm expert in finding. This morning I was watching a podcast, Mike Rowe podcast, which came up on my YouTube feed, and he was interviewing Vinny Tortorich. And they were talking about many different things, but there's one thing that I recorded a clip of for you to show you so that we could talk about it together. Well, you'll be doing the thinking and I'll be doing the talking. I have spent an inordinate amount of years dealing with, thinking about, discovering, studying, practicing everything to do with addiction. Addiction because it creates vulnerability, and I've never wanted to enhance my vulnerability in life. Um, it's interesting. People speak, oh, you need to be more vulnerable. Well, I'm not sure you need to be vulnerable in the way that I was feeling vulnerable. I wanted to create a strong and solid foundation for myself. And I knew that any addiction that I had, whether it be to a physical substance, whether it be to a behavior or an avoidance of a behavior, was going to create a vulnerability in my life. And I needed to understand why. The first addiction that I dealt with was cigarettes. And a very interesting experience because cigarettes, for me, were a solution to stress. Stress that I had no idea how to control. It was just life happening to me. And so I would smoke. And the reason why I chose to smoke as a solution for encountering stress or an attempt at a solution to reduce stress is because I observed my one and only physical living parent doing exactly that. So when I became an adult and I invited things into my life that caused stress, as we all do, this is interacting with life, is what brings about a stress state. I needed a solution so that I could continue to handle life. And so I started smoking cigarettes. It proved that in under 20 years, probably 10 or 15 years, that solution was causing more of a problem than it was making any inroads into being a solution. The stress still existed, but I had breaks from life or perception of breaks from life. And I had to endure breathing in smoke to justify those breaks. And I did it. I did it. I did it all the time. I think it took me 3 times to give up cigarettes. The first time that I tried to give up cigarettes, I read a book. I read halfway through that book, and I knew that if I kept reading, I would be giving up cigarettes. And what I chose to do at that point in time was stop reading. So, in observing my behavior at that point in time, I realized, okay, so I'm just learning how to give up this substance, give up this habit. The book was educating me very in a very fair enough way, no emotional blackmail or twisting around exactly what cigarettes are all about. And so I became very educated about cigarettes, and I knew every time I took a cigarette, that I was doing something very, very unhealthy for myself. But at that point in time, I chose the cigarettes and I cataloged that that was my choice. As time moved on, I felt that the cigarettes were holding me back and I really didn't want to be a smoker, apart from the fact that they're incredibly expensive. So I tried again. And at this point in time, I was rolling my own cigarettes. And I really did enjoy um, the habit, the ritual of having the papers and the filters and putting the tobacco in and rolling it and having a nice, relaxing time where I'm doing something quite creative in creating my cigarette. And then I would smoke my cigarette. And so this would make the break time, the break from living life, a little bit longer. And this was at a point where I was starting to become um, more and more unhealthy in my chest. And I had no idea how much it was degrading the remainder of my body and also my mouth, um, the bone loss in my jaw. Um, I had no idea of the full range of how this behavior was hurting me. However, I was aware of enough to try again. And what I ended up doing was using another belief. So I was quite aware, I think, at that time that I had a belief that I needed a solution for the pressure of life getting on top of me. I needed a reason to have a break, and cigarettes were my solution to that. So I wasn't quite educated enough as I am now in how to change a belief. But I knew that I had beliefs about things. I had done enough thinking about my thinking, and I decided to use another belief of mine to pause my physical behavior. I decided to use the belief that if I just threw out $50 worth of tobacco because I decided to buy a pouch of tobacco and about 10 cigarettes in, I decided that I would stop smoking and I would destroy the tobacco. I wouldn't just throw the pouch in the big bin outside. I would open the pouch. I would take the papers and I take every single paper out and put it into the bin so every single paper got disgusting. I'd take out all the filters from the plastic and I'd put them all in the bin everywhere so they all got disgusting. And then I'd take out all the tobacco little by little and sprinkle it all in the bin. And this is while I probably had just had a cigarette and I was all nicotined up and I had had a break from life and stress was handled. And then I would do this. And after doing that, I knew absolutely there is no way within at least an entire week that that tobacco was supposed to last, I would not be going to the shop and spending another amount of money. That's how I stopped myself from smoking for the first little while so that I could learn what it's like to not smoke. I could learn what I felt like as a not smoker. I could learn how hard it is to be without. I could learn what my thinking would be doing in that time, and I could catalog everything. I was prepared to go through whatever withdrawal, whatever craziness it did in my body, and I would understand why it was happening. I think I might have done that a few times. Experience makes you wiser. And then I stopped. Finally, I got past the first 3 or 4 days and I realized, oh, if I just get past the first 3, 4, 5 days and I can keep telling that little nicotine man that we're not doing this anymore, eventually it would quieten down. And that's how I existed without cigarettes for quite a long time. They only re entered into my life for a very short period of time after my father died. And I found myself in a completely upside down world. And I couldn't function doing anything else. And I did want escapism. And so I brought back cigarettes, but it didn't last very long. And as soon as I was out of the context of my family and the interactions and the place that I was living, um, I stopped buying them. I knew about the first 5 days of the nicotine withdrawal, the little nicotine man, and I knew that I didn't have to replace, um, the cigarettes with anything else, because I'd been a non-smoker and remembered all about it, um, from the previous experience. And to this day, I don't smoke cigarettes. In fact, I've now got to the point where I've eliminated so many toxins, as many as I can control, from my life, that when a person who has just recently smoked a cigarette walks past me in the open air of the street along the footpath, I can smell the residual, smell of smoke, that, is in their pores and in their clothes, and it's almost gag worthy. So I've got to the point where even if I wanted to have a cigarette, I can't even enter into that space. It's almost the same as, synthetic perfumes will instantly give me a headache and make me sneezing. The same as, bug spray and, all the chemical things. So that was my first experience with battling with an addiction. But little did I know that there are so many addictions. And because I had always wanted to achieve a state of relaxedness in my life. And I didn't know until a long time after attending to personal development and learning about myself. I didn't know for a very, very long time that I hadn't been in a relaxed state since I was about 3 years old. That's a long time to be rather stressed. And it has affected my health, my metabolic health predominantly. I want to explain to you my understanding of addiction. I really see that there are two levels to addiction. So, my smoking addiction was definitely level two because it was a decision about solving a problem. The problem was me feeling that I couldn't cope with the world. And until I worked out how to cope with the world and get to right my ship enough and get to the real source of why I was feeling like I'm not coping with the world, I was always going to need something as a solution. So I believe when I stopped smoking cigarettes, I wasn't swapping it out for another substance. I think I had another substance already. So I had more than one solution. And I discovered all of those solutions as I eliminated one, I discovered the one that still remained. And the one that came after that was food, junk food, really, really salty, sweet, oily junk food. And I discovered that I think I discovered that that was in existence before I gave up smoking, but I wasn't willing to deal with giving that up entirely. I think I cleaned up my diet a little bit, but I didn't get rid of all the junk. I got rid of the cigarettes first. Later, I was put in a position where part of my health journey required me to start giving up the junk food. And then I continued to give up and give up and give up. But let's have a look at those two levels. Level one, I observe a lot where it's essentially a habit has appeared in a person's life because a person has been encouraged to start something, not because they had a problem that needed solving, but more a belonging to a group, or it's the cool thing to do, or um, it's a necessary thing to do, or it's the only available thing to do. And so this is what occurs. Everyone else is doing it, so that's what you do. It takes a long time in life to want to go against the stream. We need a lot of experience of suffering going with the crowd before we make those decisions. Belonging is very important to us when we're very young. And as we are teenagers, we need to belong to an extended group. And then as we become older and we often create families, this belonging is really important. I think once you get into the second part of your life, um, I think we tend to want to stand up for ourselves a little bit more, and we have to understand how the belonging works, and often we will sacrifice a little bit of that belonging for our well-being. So level one is habitual physical behaviors, substances, or avoiding certain behaviors or substances because of a social context. Um, Now you repeat that behavior over and over and over and over and over again without actually thinking about what it's doing to you. You just repeat it over and over. And now it's ingrained in your habitual behavior. That's it. And so to change that addiction, that level of addiction, you need to use your willpower to abstain, and you need to create other habits that you are consenting to fill the place. So if you're drinking Coca-Cola and you don't want the habit of drinking Coca-Cola and you need your body to stop being used to drinking Coca-Cola, you have to make that strong decision. I'm not going to buy Coca-Cola and I'm going to drink sparkling water instead. That's what I will buy instead, and I will swap over to that. And yes, you will miss the sugar. Yes, you will miss the taste, but you won't miss it forever. You'll miss it until you don't miss it anymore. And that's how long your willpower has to last for. You only have to do something till you don't have to do it anymore. You're just doing it. So you're instilling a different habit. So that's level one. And that level is very, very doable with food, with cigarettes, with even alcohol. So if your use of substance or behavior or avoidance as such comes from just something you got used to, then you can use your willpower to change it to habitually get used to something else. So you have control and a little bit of focus and intention. Level two is a little bit more complicated because on the outside to everyone else, it looks the same as level one. It really does. They are the same habits, they are the same behaviors, they are the same substances or avoidance of those, except that level two addictions come from something before the habituation. They come from a decision that you made. And if you try to treat your addiction like it's a level one addiction and you're not having success, I suggest to you that you do emotional alignment and you find out what decision you made and at what point and in what context, and you understand that decision. You understand the context, the reason why, what decision you made, what position you were in when you made it. Understand who you were and why you did what you did at that time. In understanding that perspective and then comparing it to where you are today and what your perspective is today, you join them together and you compare them and you make a compromise and you make some decisions about the initial decision that you made and whether that decision still stands for you. That's essentially what emotional alignment is. Whether you're dealing with a habit, whether you're dealing with um, something not being available to you in life, or thinking in a certain way, or you're not being able to achieve a goal, it is the same mental system that we're working with. And addictions and habits are something that's very familiar to us all because we all live in the same society with very similar communities and same stresses and same demands on us. It's very, very possible, because I've been doing it now for years with the main goal of removing all unwanted vulnerability from my mind and my life. And I've discovered that level 2 addiction is just a little step back, a little bit of a reflective step back, so that we can understand. It very much is like going back in time to understand the perspective that you had way back when that decision was made. It really is so, so helpful and very simple. I perceive it very simply, and I seem to be able to take people back into their memories and find, because I know what I'm looking for and I know what to ask, we can find that point of decision relating to what you're identifying today as the problem. Because I understand how the human mind works and how to get those results, we change something that's sitting way back here in your timeline and we come back to present, things are actually different. It's very, very, well, it's kind of crazy, but it really, really works and it's instant, and no longer do you have to work so hard in your conscious willpowering to change a habit. So once you deal with the solution that was decided upon and the problem that was perceived way back when, all of a sudden your addiction, your habits, your behaviors, your avoidances, they all become level 1, which means all you have to do is bring your today's sensibility and your willpower to it, and you can do as you ask yourself to do. There's no different instructions coming from the past, altering the instructions that you're giving yourself today. And that is exactly how I see addiction. And that is exactly how I see any kind of achievement of goals. If you cannot decide on a goal and apply your sensibility and your willpower to it and make gains towards it, if that's not happening for you, there is something that was learned, that was decided, that was concluded way back when, that's giving you different instructions that are different from the instructions that you decided to give yourself today. And that's what I'm expert in finding, because I've spent a lot of time looking for it. And when you can find it in your own mindscape, then you have, well, I have so much ease finding it in someone else's because it's so much harder to find it in your own. And for many, it's impossible to find it in their own mindscape. And that's why I do what I do. There's a little clip that I watched on television. My television is YouTube. There's a little clip that I watched, and they referenced the show Cheers. Do you remember the show Cheers with Sam Malone? It was in a little sort of semi-underground bar. Very cool show, very funny. And Sam Malone's the character name. Now he was a recovering alcoholic who was working in a bar. Very strange situation. But what it did was create a very brave yet broken character who was confronting himself every single day where he was working in an environment that confronted his subconscious. So he had a reason. He had a level 2 reason. Because if he only had a level 1 reason, he would be able to just stop drinking and it's not a problem. But the point of the show was that he is a recovering alcoholic and he works in a bar. And so every day he is dealing with triggers from what is in his environment, and it's only you only have a trigger if you have something in your subconscious that it is triggering. There's an interaction. So Sam in the show is essentially trying to retrain himself, and so he's attempting to solve a level 2 addiction in a level 1 manner. And so he'll always be he never actually retrained himself. He constantly consciously abstained. So whether your addiction is sugar or whether it's alcohol, particular junk food, uh, sweet drinks, overeating, eating too much, um, it could just be it, it doesn't even have to be a substance. It can be creating dramatic, stressful events in your life, thinking stressful thoughts. You could have there's a whole myriad of behaviors that you could have if you are not able to apply your willpower to them. Then consider emotional alignment coaching because it could be as simple as one session to find what decision was made a long time ago that's affecting you and you don't know that it's affecting you. And there's a quote that I'm going to play you, which is talking about how we're all addicted to sugar. So even the people who are not admitting that they're addicted to sugar because they don't think they are addicted to sugar. We're all addicted to sugar because for the last 50 years, society has driven home this idea of the food pyramid. And this is why we avoid eating fat societally. This is why we are fine with eating 7 servings of grains every day as a society. This is why when you go keto, you go carnivore, it's challenging on a social level because societally we are happily addicted to carbohydrates.
But isn't that the game? I mean, look, Sam Malone, in part, was a great character because he was a recovering alcoholic who worked in a bar. And so, even as a kid looking at Cheers, I saw something so powerful about that. You know, he dealt with his addiction not by arbitraging it out of his life, but by confronting it every single day. So the sex addict works in a whorehouse. You know, that would be difficult, but there's something kind of brave about it. I think the next the next category of all this is that that's who we're all addicted to sugar. We're all
Right.
addicted to grains. The food pyramid must be the one of the greatest lies ever foisted upon humanity.
Yeah.
And so we've we've all drunk that Kool-Aid, as it were, and we are all addicted to some degree to these things. And it just seems like that's how we have to start talking about it. We are all alcoholics living in a giant distillery.
So that's my rant. That's my to Bob about addiction, level 1 and level 2. And you really will only know if you have a level 2 addiction if you first attempt to solve that addiction as if it's a level 1. And if you're not able to solve it as if it's a level 1, I highly recommend you start treating it like a level 2 addiction and you get it attended to. So it's not just me who can help you with it, but I certainly can. So be well, be without vulnerabilities, be without addiction, do whatever it takes to enjoy your life.